Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your latest edition of the OG show here at the Rangers Review. A bit of weekend viewing for your pleasure ahead of Sunday's final Old Firm encounter of the season at Ibrox. I'm joined by a full squad as ever. Firstly, Joshua Barry. How goes it, Joshua?
Fine. Yeah, good. Nothing to report since I spoke to you last.
Excellent stuff. And Jonny also, a lovely background there, Jonny. How's it going?
Yes, I've joined the green screen revolution, which you two boys are still in the process of getting on board with. But we'll get you there eventually, get you looking a little bit more professional. Although I think the listeners and viewers might be, the viewers might be a little bit upset about not seeing Derek's lovely backgrounds. There's always a painting or a picture in there that's a conversation starter, Derek.
There is. Well, the picture behind me, I've already had someone commenting, MotoGP fans love the painting behind me, which is Valentino Rossi, who's probably arguably the greatest MotoGP rider of all time. Interestingly, I do deviate slightly. Inter Milan brought out a special Valentino Rossi jersey recently, and say to the missus, who absolutely adores him, that's a football jersey for you, but it's about 200 quid, 200 euros, which is ridiculous for a football shirt. So there you go. Maybe that might be a Christmas.
You're still buying it though, aren't you? Let's be honest.
I'll wait until it comes down in price, shall we say. Have you seen that jersey, Joshua?
No,
I think Milan wore it recently.
I don't even know who Marco Rossi is.
Let's move on. Let's.
Oh, Marco Rossi was
what? Do you watch?
Valentino Rossi.
No.
Was a
Valentino Rossi.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Marco Rossi, fair, but Valentino Rossi. Nah, I don't watch F1. Sorry. Do you?
F1, dearie me. No, I don't watch F1.
Sorry, it's the MotoGP.
MotoGP, yeah.
MotoGP.
Yeah, but Inter Milan wore that a special. I think the Rossi jersey recently. I don't know if it was a Milan derby or a game. Where he's a big Inter Milan fan. So there you go. However, people are tuning in because they want to talk Rangers, of course. Before we dive into some big topics of the day, a quick word for our podcast sponsors, S1 Jobs. If you're looking to upload your CV today, hand in your transfer request, head over to S1 Jobs. There are thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh, and the surrounding areas. So you will find the one at S1 Jobs. Right, a couple of topics we're going to delve into, guys. The first being James Tavernier, shall we? He's someone that certainly sparks debate. I certainly thought this time last season it would be that the final year we'd have seen him in a Rangers jersey. I expected both he and Connor Goldson to move on last summer. Only Goldson did. Tav has stuck around. He's played pretty consistently, you've got to say, this time around, but with new ownership on the horizon, the new manager set to come into the club. Again, the questions have arisen what his future holds. He is due a testimonial, of course, which is coming up as well. Does he carry on as Rangers right back, Rangers right centre half, Rangers captain? So many questions surrounding James Tavernier. Joshua, where do you stand on him?
I was hoping Jonny would go first. I think it's less likely that he leaves this summer than it was last summer. Last summer, felt like there was more indecision surrounding his future. The fact that he goes into his final year and the fact that there is, as we've all discussed on recent podcasts, so many other players are going to be leaving. There's so much potential for leaving elsewhere in the squad. I think it makes sense to keep him around for another season. The captain question is important because does it represent something new? And I've always been more of a Tavernier defender than a criticizer, because while he's been due criticism at points, I think more often than not, he's been brought down by the level around him than being the one responsible for that. It's polarizing. People will be screaming at their screens. I think he's paid the price at points for not playing in very good Rangers teams. Equally, you need to move past him because you can't rely on him anymore. So my point of view would be keep him around, Derek, but decrease the number of games he plays. next season being his last season at the club. There's so much change going on elsewhere that I just think from a practical basis, it's one less position to consider probably at the start of the season while Rangers work out what else they're doing at right back moving forward.
He's 34 in October, Jonny. I can't see Rangers getting much for him if they were looking to move him on. I sort of agree with Joshua. I would be probably tempted to keep him around. He has featured, I think, 49 times this season, which is usual for him. He has been pretty robust, of course, during his time at the club. Where do you stand on James Tavernier?
Yeah, I'm a big James Tavernier defender, a big James Tavernier fan as a player. I think he's a good guy as well in the short amount of time that I've dealt with him. Josh has sat down with him for an hour, so he knows him better than I do. But I think that's a really good point, Derek. Amidst all the injury problems that have plagued Rangers for the last 4 years, Tavernier is just a robust machine. Even in his sort of dotage as a footballer, even at 33, coming up for 34, he's played an extraordinary amount of games, and he continues to be a guy that you can rely on to get on that pitch and play. Look, he's made mistakes. Sometimes it's been individual errors. Other times he's been exposed by the system because he is a rampaging, buccaneering fullback, or he certainly was. In terms of the question about his future, I think with any player at the age 33, you have to take it on a season-by-season basis. But I think if you're doing that with Tavernier, I think he's had a good season in a sea of mediocrity around him. And he's had to really, really lead that ship, I think, in terms of the dressing room, lots of young players. And I think he continues to do that job to the best of his ability. He's not going to be a Richard Gough type, but as I've said on a pod the other day, I don't think that kind of leadership is what flies anymore, is what works anymore, that kind of big personality that dominates. Don't think the Gen Z like that at all. So, I think he's a guy that every single manager that's been in there has praised. No manager has ever looked to remove the captaincy from him. No. I'll read you some quotes that I had stored away for this from two guys that know everything there is to know about leadership. Steven Gerrard, December 2020. People will talk about the assists and the goals, but I judge James differently. I judge him on as soon as he walks through the door. What is he doing? Is he helping me set the standards? Is he professional in everything he does? Is he leading by example? Is he helping the young lads? Is he making sure everyone is at it and the culture remains strong? I couldn't be more proud of him. That's Steven Gerrard, a guy that knows a bit about leading a team. And then Barry Ferguson recently has also been effusive in his praise, was asked about changing the captaincy. Absolutely not, he said. Listen, he's been through a lot in his Rangers career, but one thing I'll say about James Tavernier, he never ever hides. He always puts himself out there to play. And I thought on Wednesday night, I moved him from right back, which is his natural position, to centre half, and he was exceptional. And he was a real leader out there. And that's what I want from him as my captain. As I've said, we've had a few chats, and he's an important player for me. And as I said, tomorrow, 500 games, he deserves a lot of credit for that. So Barry Ferguson, Steven Gerrard, both backing him with really, really strong quotes there. And I think he's a player that while he has made mistakes, and you can't get away from that, you look at his record against Celtic, there's no doubt there's been a few nightmare situations in there. But overall, across the 10 years, James Tavernier's been an outstanding player for Rangers. And listen, I'm sure Josh has got the stats, but 509 games, 130 goals, 141 assists. He's a right back, getting you more than one every 2 games in terms of goal contributions. It's absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
I don't see his future. He's said it himself. He doesn't see his future being at right back as he moves on into the twilight years of his career, if you like. I think he could play until he's 40 if he keeps himself in good nick. But we've seen him move into centre half, Joshua, this season. Do you think that could be a role we see him playing more next season and beyond? I think Rangers need 2 new fullbacks, incidentally, in the summer. So,
I agree. They need a lot. Yeah, I think that just to come back on what Johnny's saying there, I like the suggestion that Tav is a Gen Z captain. I'm sure he's not been called that before. It is tired though, isn't it? Like it is, you know, I agree. Like fundamentally, I agree with the fact that he is someone who's shown up so often. He's often been the one that's dug them out of a hole, and he's been dragged down by players more than he's been the one that's, you know, been setting the baseline level of how Rangers have played. Equally, do you both think, to throw it back to you, if Rangers are starting this? He's also been the captain at a time when the club have not won enough trophies. So just from a if you're looking at it from a ruthless point of view, and you're new owners and a new sporting director, a new manager, do you think you can go into the new season with him as your captain, and it still represents a new era, an exciting new project? And maybe that would be unfair. Maybe that is unfair on James Tavernier, but also there's sometimes going to be debris from these decisions. So I don't know what either of you two think, but while I largely agree, and I think that he's a player who, again, everyone you speak to about him speaks about what he does behind the scenes and how he leads by example. And I'm sure he's been as frustrated as the next man about Rangers' lack of direction, really, since 2022. And often he's been the one picking up the pieces. But to throw it to you first, Derek, can that happen? Can you have a bright new era with a captain, the same captain from the previous one, even if it's not always been his fault that he has been in with other players?
I'm not sure. I think that'll be up to the new manager, as Jonny just mentioned Gerrard and Ferguson there. I think that will be up to the new manager who comes in to make an assessment on that. If he feels that there's someone with better leadership qualities in the building, then I would hope that they would make that call, even if it may be a tough one. We see teams changing captains all the time, although James, of course, has been the skipper for ages now, ever since sort of Lee Wallace was phased out, wasn't he? He's taken over that mantle. So it's a big call for whoever comes in. I don't expect him to play as many games, although I did say that last summer, and he's played nearly half a century. He'll surpass that, of course, this season. So it's a big call. I think certainly at right back, I don't see him playing there more as much as what he has done. Of course, his defensive culpabilities called into question, and they've always done that. Been the case, of course. Bilbao, the latest one when he was caught at the back post. But I think I can see him at right centre back. But in terms of the captaincy, that is all on the new manager for me. If Rangers bring in someone else that can take over that, who knows? I think he's got too much responsibility at times, Tav. I mean, I seen a clip at the last weekend at St Mirren, when Iggeman's trying to take a throw and he's waiting for Tav to run up the park. And I think that sort of other players need to take ownership of situations like that. We've seen it, of course, in the League Cup final, didn't we? The Rangers goal, one of the goals came from taking a corner quickly and not waiting for Tav to go up and take the corner. So I certainly think that he has to start delegating jobs when he is on the park, whether that's a case of taking the captain's armband off him or not, I'm not too sure. But it's a big call for the manager. We say this every time a new manager comes into the building, isn't it? Should they take the captaincy off James Tavernier? But it's clear that he's got a lot of respect in the building and a lot of respect by guys that have taken charge of Rangers as well. So that has to count for something. I don't see him clamouring for a move away. Don't think he wanted to leave last. Well, he didn't want to leave last summer either. And I don't expect that to be the case this summer. So I can see him staying on. But it's an interesting point, Jonny, isn't it? Can you see a change, perhaps, a changing of the guard with regards to the armband this next season?
Obviously, it depends on who's coming in. It's difficult to bring a player on a transfer deal and say, right, you're the captain, because you don't necessarily know them well enough to be able to make that assessment of how well they'll react around the squad, how well they'll adapt to the club. Because you need to have a captain be a top performer, don't you? They need to be a guaranteed top performer. It can't be someone that comes in from somewhere else and you don't know how they're going to do in Scottish football. So I suspect Tavernier will be the captain next season. And listen, as I said before, it's just about age. You have to assess it based on that season in, season out. Always remember Alex Ferguson having a policy, and he was way ahead of the game with this. Didn't matter if you were Ryan Giggs or Gary Neville or Roy Keane. If you were over 30, you got a 1-year deal. at Manchester United, and that's how they managed it. And it was, you have to earn your next contract year in, year out. And I think that the situation with Tavernier will be similar to that, and you'll have to make sure that he earns it. But what I would say, Derek, is based on this season, I don't see any drop off, and where I see opportunity, you talked about him being able to play until he's 40, is around him and right centre back. Tavernier was lightning quick when he was younger. He was really, really fast up and down that wing. I think some of that has dropped away from his game, maybe a yard or two of pace.
Yep.
But for a centre half, he's still rapid. You know, that he's got more than enough pace to make a right good going in there. And I think a back three is something that Rangers have underutilised over the last few years. Barry Ferguson's come in. I think there's obviously been mixed results, very, very mixed. But it gives Rangers, I think, an ability to play two up top while still retaining that threat out wide if you play that formation. And I quite like the possibilities of it for Scottish football in terms of the way teams hit you on transition. If you've got players that are able to step out from the back, step into midfield, you can really, really push forward in a really tangible way in that formation. So I think Tavernier can be a player until he's 35, 36, 37 as a right centre-back, no problem whatsoever, and still have an influence around the club. There'll be people who don't want that because they'll see the overall picture of Tavernier's time, which is obviously only one League Cup, one Scottish Cup, and one title. But it's a team game. Francesco Totti only won one Serie A title with Roma. You know, there's been lots of players who have been fantastic individual players for clubs at a time when that club is not going through the best spell. And unfortunately for Tavernier, that's been the case. I think if you put him into an Advocaat era side, he would have been absolutely incredible. If you put him in a Walter Smith side, he would have been incredible. So I think it's been unfair. And listen, this is really important. I don't want to get too statsy, but we have got StatsBomb, which we pay a lot of money for. It's world-leading stats that major international clubs use. People like Liverpool, Rangers and Celtic both use them, and up here, so we're talking about the elite up here. This is real cutting-edge football data. And they have a killer stat called OBV, on-ball value. And it's trying to measure everything in someone's game. And Josh, I'm sure, will be able to tell us like what are the negatives to it, because nothing's foolproof. But this is the best that this stats company, who are widely regarded as a leading stats company in Europe, this is the best they can come up with to measure a player's overall contribution. And in the last 7 years, in the Scottish Premiership, this is how James Tavernier is ranked overall. Right? This is as far back as their data goes. 3rd, 4th, 1st, 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 5th, 5th. So that's out of everyone. Everyone in the goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, attackers. On-ball value, 3rd, 4th, 1st, 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 5th, 5th. So you're talking impressive. You're talking over that period, James Tavernier has been the best player in Scottish football consistently over that period, according to that stat, that metric. Josh, is there anything you want to add to that? Because I know you've got more detail than I do at your fingertips on that particular stat.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes maybe it can. There's a little bit of a theory that it's weighted towards fullbacks, but I do agree. Like he obviously his impact is consistent in the fact that he's a fullback who his assists have dropped off quite a bit this season. But whether it be his dead ball deliveries or his chance creation, he produces a consistency that few others do around him. I definitely don't think he's been the best player in the last couple of seasons. I think you're going back to probably the title win and maybe the season after that for when he had a real impact like that.
Well, that's when he was first.
Yeah, and his role's changed a lot too, because he's never really played for an element of time under Clement. He was starting to play as like a real inverted fullback, but I don't think that's ever really his game. And that goes back to Stephen Gerrard speaking about how he would try to get James Tavernier and Nathan Patterson into the same squad. So I've not got much to disagree with, but the only thing I keep coming back to, Derek, is what Rangers desperately do need is freshness. Supporters are tired of watching the same players make the same mistakes, so to speak. And I guess the task next season, I think James Tavernier will be here, but it's what role does he play? Centre half could work. I don't think Rangers will play a back three because I think he's more likely to play on the right side of a back four with maybe a true touchline hugging winger on the outside of him, which Cherney isn't. Cherney wants to move in field more. And neither Cherney or Tavernier has real kind of... I think if Cherney had played with Tavernier 5 years ago and he was able to overlap a lot more, then that could have been a more dangerous combination between the two of them. So I agree he's got a lot to offer. I agree that he normally takes the flack that others should. He still has elements to his game like that Nico Williams moment, which should have disappeared by this stage. You'd imagine that when you're a fullback. But I think Rangers will probably rely on him next season to play a part and play a role, especially as we keep discussing the future of Nico Raskin. There's not an obvious contender at the moment to take over the captaincy. In the past, it might have been Jack Butland. Again, his future's uncertain too. So probably we speak a lot about how young players need a stable environment to play their best football in. But I think when James Tavernier reflects on his Rangers career as well, he'll look at post-road to Seville and think there'll be frustration for him at the direction of the club because he's not been helped by the inconsistency around him either.
Yeah, it's very rare now to see players spend such a long time at a football club, and he's someone that was doing the rounds down south. Certainly, he didn't find somewhere that to call a home. He was on loan at various clubs before he arrived at Rangers, and of course, he's now qualifying for a testimonial. Who that will be against, I'm not sure. I think given the takeover, I think Leeds would be an ideal opposition for him, given that Tav is a Leeds United fan as well. But the issue of his testimonial is a contentious one, Jonny, because there's some that say he shouldn't get one, especially after a season of appallingness that we've just witnessed domestically. Testimonials, when they were brought in initially, were back in the day when players retired and had to supplement their income somehow because they weren't paid anywhere near the levels that modern day players are paid. I've said it on a show before. I've got no issue with Tav getting a testimonial. I would like it to be some sort of a charity event where charity benefits from it. But where do you stand on a testimonial? Do you think it would be a well-attended one?
Yeah, I do. I think that while you're right that was originally the idea behind a testimonial, I think now it's so rare, Derek, that it's actually a worthwhile thing to celebrate when a player has that length of service. I don't think we'll get too many of them in the next 50 years at any of the Scottish clubs.
No.
So it'll become an increasing rarity, and it already has. I mean, I remember like growing up as a kid, there was just so many. There was testimonials all the time, wasn't there?
I know,
across Scottish football, and it's just not something that you hear of very often. So I think he deserves to have that, and people deserve to celebrate the legacy that he will leave. I go back to it: 130 goals, the top scoring Rangers defender of all time, ahead of John Gregg. You know, a guy who was the top individual scorer in the Europa League on Rangers' run to Seville. The captain of the team that stopped 10 in a row and won 55. You know, those are the things that people need to put to the fore, because he has got some achievements, and those achievements deserve to be celebrated. I get that these people have a different opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion on it, but that's mine, and I feel like it's backed up by the data. It's backed up by the goals, by the assists, by the underlying metrics, and by what genuine leaders who have been around Rangers have said about Tavernier.
Joshua, think he's deserving of a testimonial?
I think he's deserving for his service. I'm not quite as sure on what the atmosphere would be like. I think you're right to pick up on the Leeds link, and there's been some murmurings about that being a potential friendly over summer. So we'll wait to see if we can find out more about that. It's optics as well, isn't it? Because I feel like I'm being the negative voice on James Tavernier in this podcast. And as Jonny said, we did a big interview with him, and I think he's had a hard rap for a lot of his Rangers career. I think he has been unbelievably consistent, even just in an appearances basis when so many around him have not.
Yeah.
But equally, you can't ignore the optics around the fact that Celtic's dominance in this period makes the prospect of a testimonial slightly more jarring for some. However, I would agree that he deserves one, yes, because of his influence and his impact, and the fact that even if you take the road to Seville, he scored his penalty. You know, he. I know people always go back to that penalty in 2019 in the League Cup final, which is obviously years and years ago, which Alfredo Morelos took instead. But had that penalty shootout went the other way, how different would this conversation be about him? And that wasn't his fault. You know, he went and scored first.
Yep.
He really took Rangers to that final, didn't he?
Yeah.
And you could make the argument that, look, Rangers haven't been a very good domestic team. And the one year they were good domestically, the title winning season, he was probably their best player. So I agree he deserves one, definitely. I think the optics around it are maybe slightly more difficult. Perhaps they're helped by everything else that's going on at the club this season. And if it is against Leeds, as you say, he's a Leeds fan. With time, when people look back at his time at the club, however and whenever it ends, I think there'll be a lot of appreciation for what was achieved. But it's a difficult. The optics are difficult overall if you take my point, because of the number of trophies Celtic won comparably to Rangers. I mean, imagine when Rangers won that 55th title, if you'd said they're only going to win 2 of the next 12 domestic trophies. It's just been such a collective failure from members from the club overall that leads them in this position a few years later.
Yeah, it will be intriguing to see what happens over the course of the summer. Alan McGregor was the last sort of testimonial, wasn't it? That game against Newcastle. That side, I remember growing up. You're right, Jonny. A lot of those 9 in a row players had testimonials, and they were brilliant games. I actually noticed it was the anniversary of 2002, Stuart McCall's testimonial down at Bradford. I went down there. What a day that was, by the way. It was a sort of Rangers 9 in a row select team against a Bradford City side. 10,000 Rangers fans went down to Valley Parade on that sunny afternoon. But a number of the games have been class. I always remember it was Alan McLaren had a benefit game after he was forced to retire early. Robbie Fowler, I think, pulled on the Rangers jersey and scored against Liverpool or Middlesbrough. Not entirely sure, but many a good game growing up, going to watch testimonials down the years. So I'm sure, if it is against Leeds United, given what's murmuring away in the background, that it would be well attended, you would imagine. I just wish it was down at Ellen Road, but it wouldn't be. It would be at Ibrox, of course. But interesting times ahead.
5 minutes from your house.
Yeah, it's actually about an hour away, but everyone loves an away day, don't they? An English away day, you can't beat it. Although I went down to St Andrews, of course, last season, the Birmingham game. Rangers were utterly atrocious. That was a window into how the season would unfold. But everyone loves an English away day. So hopefully there's one of those in the pre-season schedule, that's for sure. Right, folks, we were going to talk about managerial candidates as well, but I'm conscious of the time. We'll maybe park that for a couple of weeks and give us something else to talk about. It's going to be, it's a big topic of discussion, of course, and we'll give it the time it deserves when we rejoin in a fortnight's time, but we'll call it a day there. I won't speak to you before the Old Firm game on Sunday, guys. Jonny, how do you see it going?
I think Rangers, you don't really worry about them in these kind of games. Fundamentally, you know that the opportunity and the space is going to be there at points, and that Rangers have the players to attack it. Celtic are coming at this one in good form, in better form than they've been in recently. A couple of big victories for them, but it's a completely different environment. It's a completely different challenge coming up against Rangers at Ibrox, and I think that the worst result that Rangers will get is a draw. Celtic will clearly be up for it and wanting to re-establish their dominance on the fixture. having recently had that rocked this season. But you know that Barry Ferguson will get the players absolutely up for this one. You know that every opportunity to exploit Celtic will be looked at, that no stone will be unturned tactically to try and get that win. And it won't be about pretty football. It'll be about getting over the line and making sure that the 3 points come back. And, you know, and what's been a really, really difficult season, I think, for Rangers fans, thank goodness for the takeover situation, or I don't know how we would have got through this last few months here at the Rangers Review, but it's a small crumb of comfort. But to look at a season where Rangers have got an overall winning record against Celtic, it would be a small step towards green shoots moving forward. That's something to point towards as a building block for the years ahead. And so I think they can lay a marker down in that regard and say, look, we may have messed up dramatically domestically, but we're a decent team in Europe. We've shown that, and we're a decent team in these Old Firm games. And when we get the domestic stuff right, then this challenge is going to be back on. And that's what it's up to them to do.
I'm concerned about it, Joshua, just given the fact Barry's comments last week about players not carrying out instructions. I think a lot of them have checked out. There's an argument they never checked in to check out to begin with. But how do you see it going?
I think it feels like a bit before the St Mirren game, you still had that element of like siege mentality under Ferguson, or it's us together. Whereas I agree with you, I don't think those comments coming just off the back of the kind of him admitting that he does want the job publicly. I don't think it will add. I don't think it will improve the moods going into that game.
No,
that equally, it's a big game for both sides, and it's the last thing Rangers have to play for. If they were able to win their last 3 games over Celtic, and obviously the cup final they were unlucky not to lose, then I think it does put a seed of doubt. I won't say anything more than that, because Celtic could be so far ahead domestically than Rangers in games like Dundee United away, and that's where the league is, I think, won these days. But it does give you a little bit of bragging rights in line with the takeover. It'll give you a bit more of a good feeling. And Celtic won't want to lose that, because it would put a bit of a...
Maybe 3 defeats in a row.
Yeah, and I get, but they're obviously going to go and win 2 more trophies between now and the end of the season, and they'll want to do it emphatically. So I think it's a big game for them. I agree with you. I don't think those comments, I wonder what the team will be after Barry Ferguson made those comments. It's going to be intriguing to see, because they in that game at Parkhead, can they play it the same as they did then? It'll definitely be a back 5. How aggressive will Rangers be? Yeah, quite. Even though nothing is riding on it, I do think by the time you get around to Sunday, quite a lot will feel like it is riding on this game, because both sides, if Celtic win it, then they can say, order is restored. They're going to go win these 2 trophies before the end of the campaign. But if Rangers win it, then it gives them a little bit of confidence going into the summer.
Certainly does. Let's hope they can do just that. Right, we'll wrap up there. Big thank you to you all for tuning in. Just a reminder, folks, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You'll never miss a video when we go live. We'll have all the usual coverage from Ibrox for you, so you won't miss a thing. But until then, we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.